What if you're arrested for a DWI? But what if there's a child in the car? Hi, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Fulgham Law Firm. Today I want to talk to you about the crime of DWI with child under 15. But I also want to talk about what else can happen if you're picking up a DWI. Maybe it's a first-time DWI offense, but yet there's a child in the back. Can there be other charges that come from that as well? And by the way, if you wait around to the end of the video, I also want to provide you a free ebook, The Ultimate Guide to Your DWI Defense in Texas. All right, let's jump into this. Now, let's say you're driving down the road and here's what happens. Maybe you were out with family, maybe you had some of your kids with you, you had a few drinks at the local restaurant. And then you get pulled over for a traffic violation, and now there's a police officer walking up to you saying, "Hey, I smell an odor of an alcoholic beverage on your breath. Have you been drinking?" Well, I want you to understand, in that scenario, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a police officer that's going to arrest you for a felony crime. Why? Because if they believe that you've been drinking, any drinking and driving, not just whether you're intoxicated, and if there's a kid in the back of the car, almost always they're going to think that that child is endangered in some way, and they're going to then err on the side of caution and look to try to arrest you for the crime of DWI with child under 15, okay? Now, a couple of things. First of all, if you have already been arrested for that crime, for the crime of DWI with child under 15, the first thing you need to do is understand this. You have 15 days from the date of your arrest to request a license hearing. A license hearing essentially says that under Texas law, we have what's called the implied consent law. We impliedly consent to provide a sample of our breath or blood or urine if we're pulled over by a police officer who has reasonable suspicion that we're intoxicated. If we fail to provide a sample of our breath or blood, we can lose our license anywhere between 90 to 180 days. Now, that will happen automatically if you do not make a request for an administrative license revocation hearing within the first 15 days from the date of your arrest. In fact, if you fail to make the request, your license will be automatically suspended 40 days after the date of your arrest. Okay, I wanted to get that out of the way. Now, DWI with child under 15. Now, here's the thing. What's crazy is this. If you pick up a regular first-time DWI, it's a Class B misdemeanor, okay? But if there is a kid in the car, it elevates it from a DWI Class B misdemeanor to a state jail felony DWI child under 15. So you go from a maximum of 180 days in jail on a regular first-time DWI up to a state jail felony punishable by up to 2 years in prison and up to a $10,000 fine. So the other problem that you can run into, and I'm going to get into this in just a minute, you can also be charged with child endangerment if there's a child in the back of the car. So let's look at Texas Penal Code Section 49.045 provides the crime of driving while intoxicated with a child passenger under the age of 15 has been committed when the prosecutor can prove the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. That you or whoever's being charged was operating a motor vehicle in a public place while intoxicated with a passenger in the vehicle that is under the age of 15 years of age. Okay. Now, listen, what do we mean? Now, it's pretty clear to say whether the child was under 15 years of age or not. Okay. So the other elements they have to prove, what does it mean to prove intoxication? To prove intoxication is the same elements as a regular DWI. They have to prove that you did not have the normal use of your mental faculties because of alcohol, or did not have the normal use of your physical faculties because of alcohol, drugs, or a dangerous drug, or that you had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08 or higher at the time of driving, okay? Now, they usually determine that based upon your performance on field sobriety tests and you providing a sample of your breath or blood, okay? Now, let's talk about the penalties for a DWI with a child passenger. The penalties under Texas law is that you can be punished a minimum of 180 days, up to 2 years in prison, and up to a $10,000 fine. You could also have a suspension of your driver's license for a minimum of up to 6 months. You could have reinstatement fees that you have to pay to DPS for your license. You can have what I call a DWI tax. It's like a surcharge. of about $1,000 to $2,000 a year. You may have to be required to have what's called an ignition interlock device installed on your vehicle. You notice there's a bunch of stuff here, a lot that you have to go through if you're facing this type of offense. Now, let's talk for a minute, though, as it relates to child endangerment charges, and then we'll come back to the DWI part, okay? Now, here's the worst part about this. If you have a child in the car, sometimes Child Protective Services can be called, and now all of a sudden they may decide, Child Protective Services may decide that they believe that child was endangered, okay, that it meets the definition of a child endangerment statute. Now, under Texas statutes, it says that a person commits an offense if he intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly, or with criminal negligence, by act or omission, engages in conduct that places a child younger than 15 years in imminent danger of death, bodily injury, or physical or mental impairment. So child endangerment also applies to reckless driving with a child passenger, failing to secure a child with seatbelt or appropriate car seat, or abandoning a child 15 years of age, but they can also be filed alongside or on top of a felony DWI with child under 15. So here's my point on that. Be careful, because what could normally be a Class B misdemeanor can all of a sudden get elevated very quickly into 2 felony charges just because there's a child in the car. And the temptation will be to just want to work out a plea deal. But I want you to understand, many times there are many defenses that could exist that could put you in the best position to be able to defend a DWI child under 15 case. The first is, and I'm going to just go over these very quickly, is the lack of there could be an illegal traffic stop. So let's say that police officer pulls you over, but they're doing it based on a hunch. They see you pulling out of a restaurant and they're just kind of profiling people, pulling them over, and they're deciding not to be able to establish that there was a reasonable traffic violation or a provable traffic violation that's taken place. Well, the police officers cannot just pull you over for no reason. They must have a legal basis, and many police reports are going to list that legal basis, but does the video show it? Is it able to be shown and proven beyond a reasonable doubt that there was a legal reason to pull you over? If not, if that traffic stop was illegal, everything after the stop is inadmissible in court, and your attorney, your DWI attorney, could file a motion to suppress and have a hearing to potentially have the case thrown out. Okay, then the other part is, what if the officer establishes certain information that he gathered only by asking you questions? But what if he improperly obtained that information from you once you were already under arrest or did not read you your Miranda rights? That needs to be observed, because any statements they try to use against you, but yet your Miranda rights were not only provided to you, but clearly and affirmatively waived, that could be a basis for us to file a motion in order to eliminate those statements from being able to be used in court. Finally, what about DWI field sobriety tests? One of the ways they try to prove if you're intoxicated is they want you to take 3 tests, usually at least the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the walk and turn test, and the one-leg stand test. Now, the reason why I say that is because those are the 3 tests that are approved and that are promulgated by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. And it's important to understand that if the police do not administer those tests properly, they are not admissible, okay? They will not be admissible in trial. All right, so your attorney needs to be familiar with those and to be able to go through there in detail whether or not that officer did everything they were supposed to do on that DWI traffic stop when they administered those tests. There are many other things. Remember when we talked about intoxication? Notice when I talked about what the definition was, not having the normal use of your mental faculties or physical faculties, that's an opinion. Okay, so you can always attack the opinion of a police officer. But then the final one is having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08 or higher. Well, how do they prove that? They can only prove that by a breath test or a blood test. Sometimes that breath test instrument or machine does not always operate properly. Sometimes it hasn't been maintained. What if the calibration on the machine is off? Now, this almost sounds funny, but the machine in Texas that is used is called the Intoxicated 5000, right? It almost sounds made up, but it is actually a machine that is used that the Texas Department of Public Safety and others put in place that, listen, the machine is only as useful as it is being maintained and whether or not it's calibrated properly. So your DWI attorney needs to make sure and go through that painstakingly. And by the way, even if the machine operated properly, there is a variance built into the machine where there's a margin of error, where it's not always what it should be. And I want you to understand that needs to be looked into as well by your attorney. Finally, what about a blood test? A blood test. Here's the questions we always ask on a blood test. How was the blood test done? Was it the basis from a warrant or consent? If there was a search warrant involved, we want to look at the four corners of that search warrant to make sure that there was probable cause established in that affidavit of the search warrant to substantiate the drawing of that blood. If not, your attorney can attack that search warrant affidavit, okay? But even if there was, who took the blood? Was it someone that is labeled as a qualified technician under the law? If they took the blood, did they use a alcohol swab, a betadine swab? Who's taking it? What then happened to the vials? Were the vials properly sealed? Were they stored properly? If there was any spoilage as a result of the vials not being sealed properly, a byproduct of that spoilage is alcohol. And I want you to understand that raises the levels and it cannot be relied upon. These are all very critical issues that have to be examined by your attorney. So my point is, just seeing that you had a blood alcohol level at a certain level does not necessarily mean there is not a way to be able to fight the case. Everything must be done properly, and even if everything is able to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, it's important that you have an attorney that knows how to put together mitigation evidence and do everything they can to protect your freedom and your future, okay? Now listen, I hope this was of some help to you. Maybe you or a loved one is facing a felony DWI, child under 15 case in the North Texas area. I want to offer you the opportunity to have a free consultation and a free case analysis. Call the number that you see above me that's been on the screen, and don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll set up a free case analysis for you and walk you through what your options are. And I also promised you, if you waited around to the end of this video, I'd give you a free ebook, The Ultimate Guide to DWI Defense in Texas. Click the link down below. We'll be happy to send that over to you. And I want to thank you for joining us here today. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to our channel, like our video. We'll continue to send you more great content just like this. We'll see you next time.